I am thrilled to introduce you to Dr. Melina Jampolis. We have a topic today that is going to resonate with our listeners. I know this 100%. The smallest changes can add up to optimize your health and well-being. And everyone knows that I shout this at the top of my lungs every day, little by little. A little becomes a lot. Slow and steady wins the race. And Melina, I'm just so thrilled to have somebody else, another professional, come on so I can shush and you can explain why this means so much in your world. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yes. So can you just back us up a little bit? What is your profession? How did you get started? And why are you here today in more of like a weight management setting?
Sure. Well, I started I'm a physician, so I'm a medical doctor, and I actually finished my residency and training in internal medicine in 1999, and I worked for about 6 months as a practicing internist. And I realized that all I was doing all day, every day was putting patients on medications for diabetes, for high blood pressure, for high cholesterol that I felt really could be addressed differently. So after 6 months and 7 years of training and taking all the exams, I actually took a brief. I left medicine in general to go into research for a couple of years because I was just really disheartened by how medicine was practiced. Even back then, 21 years ago. Um, and I actually ended up having kind of a light bulb moment during that time where I got a part-time job at a weight loss clinic in San Francisco. And I had this realization that I could do a lot more good in what I wanted to do in medicine, which was helping people by going into weight management. However, weight management wasn't everything, right? And unfortunately, then and even now, 20 plus years later, physicians aren't trained in nutrition, but I did not want to go the route of just putting people on pills and shakes to lose weight and not really teaching them how to eat correctly, and manage their appetite a little bit more naturally, organically. Um, so I started studying nutrition. There wasn't any path for physicians at the time. There still isn't. But I read textbooks, I went to conferences, I did everything I could. And that's when my journey began in both weight management and nutrition. And I became one of the first board certified physician nutrition specialists in the country. There's still only a few hundred of us, sadly, and have been really doing this now since 2001, before it was cool, before all this stuff, before everybody was using the hashtag food is medicine. I was doing it. I was implementing it in my practice on a daily basis. So that's a, so, and 20 years later, I did 2004, 2005, I did a TV show for Discovery, Fit TV, called The Diet Doctor, where we looked at 10 different diets. And I realized that, all diets work for some people some of the time. And then I've been, involved as a contributor for CNN since 2008. So really kind of functioning as a journalist and a doctor, a practicing physician, which gives me insight into, how to communicate with the public, staying up on the latest research, and then, but still practicing medicine, medical nutrition, and weight management to keep my head in the game because it's a constantly evolving field. And I learn from every single patient. And then, I've written 5 books, and my latest, Spice Up, Live Long, is kind of my pièce de résistance, where I really kind of, and it's, this is, brings us to the topic of today, which is really, how these small changes can add up over time. Because what I've learned in doing this for 22 years is, that drastic changes, and all the research shows this, don't work permanently. They really don't for the majority of people. I mean, there's outliers, of course, that are successful, if the diet program really works with their lifestyle. But for the rest of us, it's the daily slog, and that I have to do too, by the way.
Exactly. And you do it. I love that you had stated this realistically. You are a mama, you have your own crazy busy going on as well as career. What do you find that are some of your small changes or small things that you can do daily that do feel very realistic within your home and your life?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I mean, I have two young boys, 7 and 11, and I have a practice and the media's, books. I have like 50 things going on. The more it's so funny because I saw somebody's post on Instagram, that, she was talking about her morning routine, and it was like meditation and yoga and hot tea with, or hot water with lemon, and like looking at the birds. And I'm like, oh my God, my morning is like yelling at my kids to like get dressed faster, inhaling a protein bar and running out, rushing in traffic to get to the kids to school on time, with the,
Yeah.
the music blaring, because that is one thing for me that makes me happy. So, I am not that person, for those of you who are listening, that
Yeah.
has this like perfect idyllic life where, meditation for me is just not really going to happen most of the time. But I think that one of the best things that I did, and this is because I was 30 pounds heavier in actually in med school and residency, and gained weight during residency because I was in the hospital working crazy hours, and that was, when we thought fat-free everything was good for us. So I was eating like running around eating Twizzlers, and bagels with fat-free cream cheese, and wondering why I was, ballooning up and had no energy, but so one of the things that I think I've done, because people ask me a lot what I do, and
Yeah.
you know, I build the infrastructure. So I have a plan A and a plan B for everything. So I have, healthy meals plan, and then the backup. So, if I can make breakfast, if I have time to make a overnight oats or a yogurt parfait, I'll do it. But I have a drawer full of healthy protein bars too. I always have frozen meals. I have, I'm also not good at planning meals. I'm not a really good planner. So, I have a lot of good things that I know I can reach for, that work for me, that help fill me up, that are based on the, the concept of calorie density, which for me, I'm more of a volume eater, so that's a really important concept for me. So, I'm obsessed with the healing powers of herbs and spices, and I think that's a really low hanging fruit, which is why I've written 2 books on it. So, I put cinnamon in, but I'm not a great cook. I have so many things that I'm not good at. It's amazing that I, maintain a healthy weight. But so I put cinnamon in my coffee every morning. I roast vegetables with herbs, as much as I can. And I'll just throw herbs and spices into everything. So into a bok soup, I'll throw a little extra pumpkin spice, into a pre-made salad dressing, gasp, I'll put some thyme or something like that. So I really do. I mean, and then when it comes to movement, I mean, I don't have a Peloton. I have a regular old spin bike at home that I got during COVID. So I'll try to hop on that, but I'm really about movement. Like, I will take any opportunity to stand, to walk 5 minutes. I mean, in between patients, you will often see me, and I'm lucky I live in Los Angeles, but I will go out the front door. I'll tell my staff I'm walking for 5 minutes. So if my patient comes early, tell them I'm walking. I stand for phone calls when I can. I work on my laptop. I put it on my kitchen counter sometimes just to stand more. So I really do practice what I preach when it comes to small changes, but I'm not perfect. I really am not. I eat gluten, I eat sugar, I drink more than a glass of wine on occasion. I mean, I do all the things that everybody online seems to not do. They all seem to be perfect with their habits. I am not perfect by any means, but I am consistent with the small changes.
Oh, I'm loving all of this. And I'm right there with you. No one's perfect. And everything you're stating goes back to why it's such an individual journey, because the things that you're doing work really well for you. And they
Mhm.
may work really well for somebody else. They may not, and it's okay. And I love you're just very clear on how you state that, because I think that people do feel like they need to be the best cook and they need to be the best organizer and be the person meditating and looking at the birds. And for some people, it is golden and it's exactly what works for them. But it's also okay to be running out the door with your bar in your hand sometimes. So love it, love it. Thank you for shouting all of that out. It just continues to emphasize the point of it is your own journey. Keep your eyes on your own paper. Darn it. So
Yeah, and that's really that's one of my passions in nutrition, by the way, is this emerging field of, it changes between personalized and precision nutrition. But I think when I say personalized, that means I really want to personalize it to your lifestyle, and I'm somebody who happens to love exercise, and I don't have enough time to do it and to get to the gym and do a full body workout. So I'm somebody, that doesn't cook. I'm not a real foodie, but so I try to personalize everything that I do to the individual and help them find their best path. And then with precision, where we're learning more and more about, the genetics and the gut biome and metabolomics and proteomics. On that level, I'm trying to, more precisely tailor recommendations, because guess what? Low carb is not going to work for everybody. Keto is not going to work for everybody. Intermittent fasting isn't going to work. And there are some clues to that in your genetics, So I love combining more precise recommendations with more personalized things that you're actually going to do long term and consistently.
yes, realistic. It keeps coming back to that, which is huge. So it's interesting. I used to work in surgical weight loss. I also worked at an athletic club, nutrition consulting, and so my dietetics has kind of brought me across the whole board too. And I agree with you. I think that for everyone something works, but it's about, I always felt like it was about giving the jump start so that like they could feel better, that their knees could feel better, that it was less about like what they were doing and more about get better, feel better. And now that you're getting that grace, how can we start implementing those small changes along the way? And again, you're saying the same thing. We're not saying anything's like terrible or bad. We're just saying it's very individual, and don't look at it as a quick fix. Look at it as a jump start.
Yeah, and
Um,
but you bring up an interesting point about that with the jump start. I think that, that's another thing why, actual experts, not just, internet experts and Dr. Google really can help the average person, because I mean, there is a large body of research showing that I love that you do jump start, because at the beginning of weight loss, you like that's another thing, is that it's going to be different as you go along. So there are studies that show that, more success early on predicts longer term success. So, oftentimes I'm going to be a little bit more aggressive the first 4 to 6 weeks with patients, not because I want them to eliminate everything from their diet, but because I want them to have that jump start and that, feeling better, that experience, having the scale move, because unfortunately we're all married to this scale, and that I think is not going to go away, and maybe isn't the worst thing, because at the end of the day, it does give us information. But, I think what I try to do too, and I'm sure what you have done in all of your practices, diverse practices, you know, it's it's not black or white, I mean, people, it's like they have a switch. They're either on a diet or they're off. So I'll be a little bit more aggressive for the first 4 to 6 weeks, and then transition into something that's even more realistic, and then transition into the maintenance, which is even more livable. But I think, and most people don't understand that journey. It's really in phases. And if you don't personalize all three of those, and also think about those, and mentally prepare yourself for, the fact that, yeah, it may feel a little bit more restrictive for the first 4 to 6 weeks, but that's not going to be permanent. And by the way, if you're somebody who doesn't want to restrict anything and is okay with slow weight loss, let's do that. Let's just do lifestyle changes and focus on feeling better, and forget the scale. Just try on a pair of jeans. There's so many different ways of doing it. I'm sure in your experience, you've really developed a lot of tools too. It must be interesting.
yes, I went on this whole journey of wanting to smash scales, and I'm still a little there, but also realize that there's a place for them. But really rewriting the rules to what that success can look like, and getting people off of just the scale, making sure that we're really seeing all these other areas that we're
Yeah,
succeeding and acknowledging. I have a question
I
for you.
Yeah, no, I agree with you 100%. I didn't want to overplay the importance of the scales, because I think they can be really, really damaging too. And that's
Yeah.
another, I think it drives me crazy when women, their self-worth is defined by that number every morning. And so that's another area where I personalize it. There's some patients where I say, you are not allowed to get on the scale at home, because I have a scale that does body composition only, that does fat mass, muscle mass, water weight, bone density. So oftentimes I won't even tell those patients their weight. great. I will say your muscle went up 4/10 of a pound this week and your fat, you know what I mean? Body
Yeah.
composition is definitely key. So I agree with you 100%. This scale, I think, can be more psychologically damaging, particularly to women. So it's a tough balancing act, but that's another way where you personalize it. You cannot let that number on the scale define you every morning because it's just going to put you in a bad frame of mind and you're not going to succeed long term. But go ahead with your question. Sorry.
Oh no, that was so good. Thank you for going there. Really rewinding to your point of it's a journey and like sometimes jump starting it, and then there's this, now it's the lifestyle change time. How do you keep clients long enough to get them through? Because I feel like a lot of people's fall off is they get motivated, they lose the weight, and then all of a sudden their motivation to keep showing up at the office or on a Zoom call or whatnot starts to dissipate. And it's like, I feel like that's the most important time in the journey. And it's always a time where the fall off is most likely to happen.
Yeah, I wish I had a great answer for you. I really do. I'll be perfectly candid. I don't succeed a lot. I think the patients that are intrinsically motivated, that really are, in a place where this is an important thing for them, whether it's health, a health scare, um, you know, I I have not found any successful tool for retention like that, but I do set the groundwork very early at the first appointment. I guess I kind of tease them with, how much more I'm going to tell them as they go, so even at the first appointment, I use a lot of supplements in my practice, but I don't do anything at the first appointment. So I say, I want to see what your body does naturally because everybody wants a quick fix, right? They want me to give them a pill. They want me to give them a magic supplement. So I'm constantly kind of laying the groundwork for what's next. Like 2 weeks from now, when I see you again, whether it's Zoom or in person, we're going to talk about bringing this in, or we're going to talk about this challenge that I know you're having, but I want you to, or let's try this for 2 weeks. Let's add this in for 2 weeks and see how it is. Now, and when they get to their goal, that as they're getting closer, I'm very, it's a lot of counseling, right? I mean, it's a lot of, don't get, this is where I think weighing yourself regularly does matter when you're at your goal because and that's something that I wrote about in one of my books. I have like, when you're maintaining, which by the way, I tell patients from Thanksgiving to New Year's Day, just maintain.
Mhm.
Don't try to, don't, you know what I mean? Let's be real about it. But I will, I think weighing yourself is more important for maintenance. And, if you go 2 pounds up, that's probably just salt or soup. If you go 5 pounds, then you got to get back on it. So it's just about, really being honest with the advice that, this is, an issue. This doesn't just go away. That like you're at your goal weight and suddenly you can eat whatever you want and not exercise. Like, and I'm also very honest about my journey. People just assume that erroneously that I'm naturally thin and I don't have to worry about it. I'm like, if I go off for a weekend, if I have pizza with my kids, go to a birthday party and have cake, I feel it on I don't weigh myself a lot like you, but I know I'm very aware of how my clothes fit and I have,
Sure.
even how my scrubs fit. I know if they're a little tighter around the midsection, especially I'm 51, so I can't get away with what I used to 20 years ago, although I know a lot more. So, but I'm very honest with my own struggles and journey because I think they assume that people who are thin are naturally thin and don't have to do much. And I am not that person. So, I'm very open about probably too much. I talk too much about what I do, but that it is something that it's constantly in my awareness. Again, I'm not super strict. I eat bread, I eat sugar, I drink wine. More than a glass on occasion, a lot more. I think I just, it's an ongoing conversation that's reinforced at every visit. And for somebody who's not working with a professional, I mean, I think it's just, being real with yourself that this is this is why you need to find something livable. And this is why you need to keep focusing on these small things. And I actually have patients, and this is something that anybody can do. Write down their weekly successes. Like, what are the small things that they did on a weekly basis? That really, that what worked, what didn't. And so then, even if it's just in the note section of your phone, you can refer back to it. Because a lot of people, I write them down. So when a patient comes in, I would say, they always come in, it's like a confessional. I ate this week. I'm like, I don't want to know what you did wrong first. Let's focus on what you did right. and and
Love it.
and I make a note of it in their chart. And then I'll look back, like if 6 months later, when their weight is plateaued or they're regaining, and I'm like, 6 months ago, you seem to be doing more, real breakfasts at home, and that really worked for you. Is there a way we can bring that back in? Or, 6 months ago, you managed to get 2 days of strength training. What happened? Is it, so I think, and this is what, people can really feed off their own. They learn from themselves. They
Yeah.
teach themselves. It's like, oh my God, I forgot I did that 6 months ago. And I forgot I loved those Trader Joe's meatballs. I've got to go buy them again. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So it's keeping that success journal and successful strategies. I mean, I think you write your own diet book, right? I mean, I never said that before, but that's kind of catchy. I like that.
I like it too. That should be
Yeah.
your next book.
I know, seriously, right? Here's 10 steps to write your own diet book. I'm going to make a note
Yeah,
of that. I don't
do
need a
it.
pen. No.
But it's recorded. It's
Oh,
it's in
perfect. Right. Okay, perfect. I'll watch it. I'll have it on a loop.
yes, perfect. No, I had an interviewed guest one time talking about success leaves clues, and it's exactly what you're talking about. It's success leaves clues to our own individual successes. Again, not what is in somebody else's success book. It's what works for us and why it's working. And then just having full expectation that different seasons of life will bring different obstacles. And there's a reason why maybe that's not working anymore. And this is why I love you're part of the accountability. They come back and they have somebody to externally talk through why is that not working? Okay. And how can we look at it with our new set of barriers?
Yeah, that's a
Um,
really great point too. I just filmed an episode of The Doctors over the weekend, and I mean, one of the things that we were, they asked me what a health. People always ask this, right? What's a good rate of weight loss? And sure, I can give you the population-based averages, which is 1 to 2 pounds a week, but
yeah.
I mean, almost nobody falls in that range, right? Because if you're older, you're a woman, you have any thyroid abnormalities, I mean, you're not going to lose 2 pounds a week consistently, right? So and that's another reason why the scale can be so damaging. But that even alone, realistic expectations. I mean, and when men and women go on diet, husbands and wives at the same time.
Yeah.
The
Terrible,
man will be
right?
like, I thought about a diet and lost 5 pounds. And the woman's like, oh my God, I did everything perfect and I lost half a pound, So
Right.
it's
Ah.
definitely, it's everybody's own journey. And
Okay, I have two things and we can't let them go. One is just the accountability piece. And then two, I want to talk about women in their 50s, 60s and the weight loss struggle. But first, I just want to ask you back to your personal journey, the whole idea that you are maintaining, and that I feel like maintenance is the hardest part of this journey. Do you feel like doing your career and your job is the accountability that's really helping you through this part of maintenance?
yeah, absolutely. I do, because I feel like I would be such a hypocrite if I walked into a patient's office and, was 50 pounds overweight. How can you possibly? I mean, it's like your doctor sitting outside the exam room smoking and then coming in saying, "Oh, I don't like the sound of that cough." I mean, it's the same thing. And yes, it's amazing to me. The Obesity Society meeting, I'm a member of the Obesity Society, and for the first 10 years, the food that they served at these meetings was crap, and thank God the last few years they have really, I started taking pictures and giving them kudos, because I'm like, good for you. I mean, but most obesity doctors are not trim, which I just think, I mean, we're supposed to have the answers. I mean, we don't all need to be, I'm more of an athlete. I still do triathlons and everything. So it's a little bit easier for me probably, and I love exercise. And I love sweets though, just as much. But I do think, it it's my responsibility. And it's funny because I used to be in San Francisco. My weight management practice started in San Francisco. And I actually weighed 10 pounds more when I was in San Francisco, and was still doing what I do at a TV show. And when I came to LA, I was like, okay, I'm going to need to reset this paradigm a little bit. But I do feel like that definitely holds me, I do live with Kelly and Ryan every single January. So, like, over the holidays, I am definitely not letting loose because I have to stand next to Kelly Ripa every single January. Since I've been doing the show since 2007, I've had to stand next to her since I mean, pregnant. I was just like, one time it was actually with Regis. We went grocery shopping for the show, and I was like 4.5 months pregnant, and you couldn't really tell except for that I was just thicker everywhere. And I kept trying to get it in. I'm like, well, I'm pregnant, so I'm going to buy these. And they cut every reference to pregnancy. And I was like, no, the viewing audience has to know that I'm 4.5 months pregnant. I'm not just letting myself go. So definitely I'm held to a different but my own standard. I mean,
Sure.
there's still a lot of doctors. I think it's more doctors. I mean, trainers and dietitians, well, there's dietitians that struggle too. And I know it's a struggle, and I know it's hard, and you know, but it's not hard for me anymore. I really have built the habits, and I want to emphasize so much to people listening that I am not extreme in anything that I do. I am consistent with the small changes. I really
Mhm.
am. If people saw, I should keep an honest journal of what I, eat on a daily basis sometimes, because I think, I'm also not a BSer. Some of these, when I look at what these people write that they eat or they post, I'm like, there is no way, that is, I mean, maybe there is. Maybe they're just better than me and, have more free time. But even in my free time, I don't want to do a lot of meal prepping and cooking. It's just not my thing.
Right.
I want to read or be with my kids or walk my dogs. I don't want to be in the kitchen. I just don't. So, I don't know. I just try to keep it real and keep it consistent, but definitely being on TV. Zoom is a little different because, like, right now I'm wearing sweats on the bottom, so I could be 10 pounds heavier and it'd be fine. But, I still, I'm still preparing for having to go back. And I actually had to do live in person when my new book came out in June. So that was like a reset, although I was also, training for a triathlon then. So it was good. I looked okay next to Kelly. Not great, but okay.
That's quite the pressure going on through the holiday
Yeah.
season. Holy cow. You mentioning that you do triathlons too. I did find with a lot of my really successful weight loss clients that a lot of them have inserted being, whether that be like a fitness instructor or just something
Mhm.
else in their life, or doing marathons, triathlons, something that is built into their life that's I show up to it. I have to show up to it. And then that just, again, it helps with the shift of lifestyle change because you really,
Yeah, definitely. I mean,
yeah,
and even, for me though, the only thing I get, caveat to that is I see a lot of women training for marathons gaining weight
yeah,
because they think that they've earned so many more calories. And so, you know, you got to be a little careful with that. But also, I mean, you don't have to, yes, if you have the money to pay for a personal trainer, showing up for them, but just a walking partner, or get it. That's one of the great things about the pandemic is so many people adopted dogs. And I mean, my dogs are my best walking partner. They never have an excuse. They're always super psyched to go. So, it doesn't take a lot of money necessarily. And you don't have to start doing triathlons or training for marathons. Like, if you want to, great, because it's great to set goals. And like I tell people, I started doing triathlons at 49. That was my first one at 49 years old. So, and it's cool because you don't get medals that often as adults, but I think that also you got to be a little careful training for an event because that's where the on off switch comes. Because then the event happens and then they're like, oh, I can go back to my old ways and I don't have to train 5 days a
totally.
week. And if you keep eating the way you did when you were training 5 days a week, you're going to regain the weight very quickly. So, again, it's this individualized thing. Like, for me, I'm kind of sad. My triathlon was a few weeks ago and I'm like, it was really nice, like feeling like I had to train like on my lunch break. I had to do, a 90-minute spin. I don't have that drive anymore, which is
Mhm.
kind of a bummer. So, there's all, but now I'm trying to move on to my next thing. Well, now I'm moving on to being next to Kelly in January. So,
Yeah. One of my favorite phrases with too much exercise is we cannot out exercise our eating habits, which I'm probably sure you have a lot of those discussions with clients as well. But just it is easy to get in that mentality of I just did 2 hours of something. I can have whatever I want. But yeah,
yeah, and
I
it
like it.
really it's, weight loss, that's the dirty little secret, right? Is that weight loss, particularly for women, is I would say 80 to 90% diet. Maintenance is 50-50. So, if I'm
Mm.
building, the foundation that I'm setting is I'm going to push you to get into an exercise routine for with the goal of helping you maintain the weight, not to help you lose the weight, because I think people have very, very unrealistic and hit TV shows who shall remain not mentioned have reinforced this, that if you're in the gym for 8 hours a day, somehow that can equate to, but that's really not the case, especially for women. We just do not lose weight with exercise. We don't. But maintenance, it is critically important. So if I can lay the foundation and build the habits, which take a while to build during the weight loss journey, I know I'm going to help them maintain better too.
Right. I think this segues perfectly into we keep mentioning women and that they do struggle a little more with quick scale success. What are some of your conversations around these women who literally are out there? They are moving, they are eating healthy, their calories look low. You can look at their food logs, and you're like, we are getting mostly accurate information, and yet the scale is still not budging.
Yeah, and just so for women out there struggling like that, it kind of pisses me off that when doctors say, "Oh, you must be eating more than you're saying. You must not be telling me this." I know that my patients are telling me the truth, right? They're not paying me to pull a fast one on me. They may have a little bit of calorie amnesia if they're not keeping a food journal, but they're not
Calorie.
they're not keeping things from me, right? So,
Right.
I think that it frustrates me with the traditional medical system that they often just assume that people aren't trying hard enough, or are somehow sneaking donuts. And do I have those patients? Absolutely, I do, but it's not the majority of them.
No.
I think it's again, I always believe that knowledge is power for people, and so for women, I think perimenopause, which is what I'm in right now. So pre, peri, and post. Premenopause, which starts anywhere 40 up, it could start, 43 to 47 is probably the average. So that's premenopause. I think it starts getting tough. Perimenopause sucks. It is the absolute worst time of life for a woman in terms of weight and the scale, because hormones are fluctuating considerably. That's very stressful to the body. And it also causes metabolic abnormalities that make it much harder to lose weight, specifically insulin resistance.
Hmm.
Um, so, it the good news is that there's a light at the end of the tunnel. Once women get through menopause, it becomes easier again. It's not like you can go back to eating like you did in your 20s, but the insulin resistance and the cortisol and all these things that make weight loss so damn hard, are better when postmenopausal. My postmenopausal patients do much better than my perimenopause is the worst. So if
Hmm.
you're, I would say 47 to 52, you know, I that's
I'm
where I
screwed.
am.
No.
You're
Just
pretty
kidding.
much screwed. Yeah. No, but that's where I am. My counseling becomes much different. And it is about, most people, I'm an old mom, so I have, I'm 51. I have a 7-year-old and an 11-year-old. I had my first kid at 40, second at 44. But for most women in perimenopause, the kids are out of the house or nearing out of the house. So they maybe do have more time to slow down and do these things that, I'm really much more focused on lifestyle with women in perimenopause. So sleep, and this is something that I struggle with. It's the bane of my existence. Stress management for me. Exercise is stress management, not meditation. But I mean, if it's meditation, if you can do a 5-minute app every morning and just calm yourself, or during the day, it's lifestyle movement, building in as much NEAT as possible, non-exercise adaptive thermogenesis, being real with them. I'm starting a new podcast too, actually. So maybe we can flip around. You can come on mine. It's called Practically Healthy by Dr. Melina. But so these practical things, you know, I don't BS them. You are never going to be able to eat like you did in your 20s. So get over it and figure out how to make it work. You don't have to cut everything. I mean, I hate these menopause experts who are like, you have to cut sugar and dairy and caffeine and alcohol and gluten and soy and it's like, what that? Of course they lose weight because there's 5 things they can eat. But you do have, I do really believe that you have to cut back on carbs. No, you don't have to cut them completely, but
Yeah.
because of the insulin resistance that happens, so you have to cut back on carbs in some way. You can't have, bread at every meal. So that's one thing I think is really important. I think strength training is critically important. And
Mm.
for building muscle is going to help you maintain, and it's going to help you with insulin resistance, regardless of the number on the scale. And by the way, that's another, I guess I'm not so pro scale after all. I keep saying why I'm not. Because that's another thing. If I'm starting a woman perimenopause on a resistance training program,
Yeah.
I am specifically telling her not to get on the scale, because guess what? Muscle's going to go up while fat goes down. So the weight's going to stay the same, but it's a good thing. Body composition change is a good thing. So, more lifestyle movement, more lifestyle activities, stress management, cutting back on the carbs somewhat, incorporating resistance training. And, I do think, I'm on the fence with things. I don't do a lot of like bioidentical hormones or anything like that. But I do use natural supplements. So if you're suffering from things like night flashes, which are impairing your hot flashes at night,
Mhm.
or night sweats, I think there's natural supplements, starting with things more natural for menopausal symptoms. And if that's really not working, I mean, then I would recommend going to, a doctor that's trained in hormones, or even, there's low dose antidepressants for night sweats that actually are effective. So, I think, patients or people really need to be their own advocates in this, in getting help if they need it. But, in terms of, things are going to change a little bit. But that's why I really do. I don't like to eat like, I mean, I did it for my TV show. I interviewed the woman who wrote French Women Don't Get Fat. And I spent
Mhm.
some time at her house, and like, she serves little bird-like portions. And I'm like, this is not a meal. This is not breakfast for me. You know what I mean? I'm not, I lived in France for a while, but I am not a French woman. And, so I think you do have to cut calories, or you can burn more, because I'm somebody who could never be full on 1,200 calories a day. So I don't like, I don't have the time to do 90 minutes of workouts, but I do have the time to walk around my office, and I love my Apple Watch. I really do. It's a game changer for me. And I don't work for Apple. It's not an endorsement, but for me, making sure that I stand up every hour. I like those reminders. I don't like the breathing reminders. I know I'm breathing, but and just paying attention to my step counts. And I do look at that for patients. I look at their data. I'm like, really? 4,000 steps a day? I mean, you have to work to get that little exercise. You know what I mean? So, and just kind of pushing them, again, being realistic. If they're starting at 4,000, I'm not going to tell them to get 10,000 tomorrow. I'm going to say, let's go up by 500 steps or 1,000, and let's see, how can you do that? Really, do walk around your house at night while you're talking on the phone to your best friend. I don't care, but 4,000 is not okay. But this, again, small, realistic things that you can really do on a long-term basis.
Yes, my goodness, we are so on the same page. I'm loving this. I still have more questions around, this insulin resistance and what we're up against. I am a firm believer that there's this equation, that food has to be part of it, fitness has to be part of it. And then sometimes I believe that I'm going to insert supplement or medication needs to be part of it in order to get success. And one of my examples with that is like women with polycystic ovary syndrome. I really believe that if we don't have that metformin or that drug there that's going to help, then they're always fighting this uphill battle of where they could be seeing results. And there's always this piece of me that thinks, is that the case, for if we are battling insulin resistance, is it really just eating and monitoring our carbs, eating less carbs, monitoring our carbs? Or is there a time and a phase in our life where we should be considering some other supplement or medication?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think again, it's very individualized. I mean, and I also think it depends on your level of motivation and commitment because I do have patients with PCOS that uh, you know, if they're very motivated, that I can get away without metformin. But I also don't want them, to think of it as a sign of weakness, which a lot of people are like, oh no, I should be able to do this naturally. Your body, for some, especially PCOS and women who are, I would say, with somebody who's perimenopausal with a strong family history of diabetes, there is clearly a genetic component there. So they really may be fighting an uphill battle. If it's somebody that was, so this is if it was somebody that was thin their whole life and then comes in and is struggling with menopausal weight gain, perimenopausal, I'm going to push them a little bit more on diet and exercise first and lifestyle and then ease in. I do the same thing, ease into supplements. There's some great supplements out there. It's also a very challenging field to navigate, obviously, because it's not tightly regulated or researched necessarily. So I do only, physician grade supplements that are at least tested. So, what's in the bottle is what they say is in the bottle is actually in the bottle. But, you know, um, I, I think PCOS is a different beast because there is clearly a genetic component and also a hormonal component that really isn't under your control as much. I mean, but so metformin is, I pull the trigger a lot faster in those patients with metformin. With perimenopausal women, much less so. Metformin is really down the line for me. And the other thing is that, the metformin is really not going to help them significantly with weight loss. And so, most women again are just married to the scale. They're like, well, why am I taking a medication if I lost like 3 pounds in the last 4 months? They don't understand the concept that I'm improving the metabolic, environment in their body, their ability to break down fat.
Yeah.
But they still have to do the work. It is and this is a thing where I revert to pills, prescription medication much later in my practice because I need them to do the work first. They do not work on their own, but certainly there is a role for that. And I am much more aggressive with supplements than traditional doctors. And like the Obesity Society frowns on supplement use. They say that no doctor that's, legitimate in obesity medicine uses them. Well, I've been using them for 20 years in my practice, and I think I'm pretty legit. I think it's, the medical establishment is very quick to poo poo. By the way, most of them don't use diet either. They're just putting people on pills and shakes. I'm teaching them how to eat, to use food as medicine, food to control insulin resistance. And by the way, it's a lot more than just cutting back on carbs. I mean, I think, really eating an anti-inflammatory diet, which I've been talking about for 10 years now, and now it's cool all of a sudden,
Hmm.
can really, really help. But again, you don't have to be perfect. It's all about balance. So another thing that I do is I eat a bunch of vegetables every night for dinner because I find them really, unless I take the time to go out for a salad, it's hard to get them in the rest of the day. And again, because I'm not cooking and meal prepping a lot, but so these things where I'm balancing out my sugar intake, my alcohol, I am always getting, I mean, 95% of the time, I'm getting probably 3 cups of vegetables at night. So and I make them taste good, by the way. I'll do broccoli with freshly grated Parmesan. You don't have to be like boiled chicken and steamed broccoli. I mean,
Right.
food should taste good too.
Lean and
It's
green
part of the
only.
pleasure. Yeah,
Yeah.
I know. Lean and green. It's like, yeah, really lean and green and boring,
Yeah.
and that's where herbs and spices again come in, which, shout out to my book. But,
Yeah.
herbs and spices can make things taste better. And by the way, many of them help with metabolic syndrome, help with belly fat. There's a study showing that cumin can help reduce belly fat. So I will throw it in, I throw cumin. I love the taste of it. I put it in guacamole. I put it in soups. I put it in chili. That helps with belly fat, with visceral fat, with insulin resistance, cinnamon, ginger, cayenne. And then spices that help with the gut biome, herbs, oregano, the gut, really helps a lot with insulin resistance. So there's so much eating eating fish twice a week. There's so many little things that you can do. And I do talk a lot about that in my book is, the keys to an anti-inflammatory diet, which equates to a diet for insulin resistance. And it's not just about carbs. If you just cut carbs and did nothing else right, you're probably
Mhm.
not going to be that successful long term in your weight management or in your health journey. So, you really have to look at the whole picture.
I need your book. I definitely feel like this is one of those things when people hear the why behind why it's important. Why is your cinnamon going in your coffee? Why are the
Hmm.
herbs and spices getting added to everything? And just like you're starting to describe, because they have true significance, even just when you look at the eating the color of the rainbow and what which each color of each food starts to provide for us. And I love teaching kids about this because when you look at food that way, you take away the calorie component. You
Right.
take away, you're like, if I can reduce the risk of Alzheimer's by X percent because I'm eating this or because I'm fitting in workouts, my motivation for that is like, whoo,
Right.
let's do it versus I'm going to go burn 200 calories.
Right. And that comes into the like precision nutrition, by the way, too, because like you have to speak to people where it counts. If you have a
Yeah.
family history of breast cancer, you're going to be more interested in knowing, that like rosemary and thyme can help you with that. And you're going to be more likely to find ways of incorporate. If Alzheimer's is an issue, then turmeric. I mean, so you find your own, personalize it for yourself. And this is you're right. I'm 100% believer in knowledge is power. And you should see my kids. They're so, especially my 7-year-old. He's like, strawberries are nature's candy, mommy. I'm like,
Yeah.
good job, Bobo.
Yes, I love that.
Yeah.
Man, that's generation changing right there because they're going to be saying it to their kids and so on.
Yeah.
Tell us why did you start writing in the first place? I mean, you're 5 books in at this point. Where was the passion? Where did that start?
Um, I'm a fool. No, I'm just kidding. I wrote my first book in 2006, 2000, released it in 2007, because I had just spent a year of my life interviewing. So the TV show that I did was called Fit TV's Diet Doctor, and each episode I interviewed a different diet book author. And so we went, like, I would go and interview Barry Sears, who wrote The Zone, and I talked to him about the why. And then I would come back to San Francisco and put one person on a version of that diet and go grocery shopping with them, go through their cabinets, clean them out, do all this stuff. And I realized that every single episode I was saying, this is why I agree with the diet, but, and there was always a but, and there was always, I felt like there was a way that I could do it better. So
Mhm.
and also more practical, because I feel like a lot of these popular, like the Whole 30, no disrespect, but there is no freaking way I could do that for 30 days. I don't even think I could do it for one day, honestly, but whatever, that's me. So I kept finding myself modifying every diet to make it more realistic. So my first book was called The No Time to Lose Diet, The Busy Person's Guide to Permanent Weight Loss. And I took the knowledge and really made it livable. And each chapter, I loved that book so much. It didn't do well, but it really, and I read it now, and it is still 100% spot on. I agree with everything that I wrote in 2006. Nothing has changed. I mean, I've added to it, focusing more on inflammation and insulin resistance. But
Yeah.
even back then in my first book, I developed a carbohydrate calculator so that people could personalize their level of carbohydrates to their age, their sex, their activity level, their family history. So, I mean, I was doing this back in 2006, and now we're understanding that more personalized precision. So that was the first book. Then the second book is called The Calendar Diet, because I really started realizing that there was there's two reasons people face different challenges every month based on the holidays, the food availability, the activity level.
Mhm.
So I felt like really having not only customize each month. Hey, here's what to do Super Bowl Sunday. Here's 10 quick, easy things that you can do to have a better Super Bowl spread. And also the idea of eating seasonally, which I think is different in this country. We don't necessarily think about it because everything's available year round. So that was the second book. And it just there were just, because I was practicing and doing all this and doing a lot of media and talking about this and doing segments. I'm like, I was translating everything that was going on in my life and my clinical experience to books, but nothing that I ever did was gimmicky. And so none of my books were breakout bestsellers because it wasn't like lose 10 pounds in 10 days. This is actually building the habit, small changes add up, and that doesn't sell books. It really doesn't. So every book has just been a labor of love and passion.
Yeah.
But I think there's a lot to learn from all of them. And I'm really proud of them, even though 5 people read most of them.
Oh,
No,
stop. No,
I'm just
that is
kidding.
one of those things that is amazing, especially nutrition and how it's this like ever evolving. We can barely stay up on it and we're in the line of business. For you to be able to look back at your books and say it's all still valid, it is relevant, valid, like still holds true is awesome. And I think that this is just our cross to bear is that we are in a profession that people want fast, and of course we want quick fun results, and we're just forever going to battle that, and it's okay. Like I've kind of settled into that too, that if it's one person who can walk away today with a little token and nugget that will help them change. And I actually have a physician that I do consults with, and he was like, tell me your biggest success story. And I was like, this is not going to be glitzy or glamorous for you. It is
Right.
that my clients who I've had for 5 or 10 years can tell me that they have a changed mindset, that they look back and they're a
Mhm.
different person than they were before. And I was like, that's not going to sell. It's not going to sell books. It's not going to sell even consults, but like, that's the truth. That's my happy spot is if we can
Right.
shift the brain and
Yeah.
do this slow and steady.
That reminds me of one more quick funny story about Regis, rest and, but I did a segment once and it was really about small changes adding up. Like I can't remember what holiday it was, but it was, and in one of them, I was like, and you could save 100 calories. Not that I like to focus on calories, but in practical ways I do. And he's like, but that's 2 pounds a year. And I'm like, yeah, but it's small habits adding up. I'm not saying that this one thing is going to get you in your skinny jeans, Regis.
Yeah.
He's like, what? 2 pounds a year? Who cares? I'm like,
Yeah.
but cumulative. It's the cumulative effect. I promise this works. But I love that.
Yes.
I love changing the mindset is if you don't do that, you don't succeed. Period. You really
Right.
don't.
You're forever battling the ups and downs. And again, that's where I just give you huge props, kudos that you're living in maintenance because it's hard. It is daily effort. And but it's also expectations. If we can get each one of our clients to settle into realistic expectations, then the
Right.
journey can actually be enjoyable versus we don't have to fight it every step of the way. Oh my
Absolutely.
goodness.
Yeah.
Okay, where can our listeners find you? Where's the best place to seek you out?
I'm I try to do Instagram. I'm not very good at it, but I have a website, drmelina.com, where they can find out, kind of what I'm up to. I do Facebook and Instagram, Dr. Melina, DRMELINA. And then, I try to like post, TV appearances and blog posts on both of those outlets. I'm not as good at keeping a calendar on my website, but you can track me down. I pop up everywhere. I don't know.
Okay.
I do a lot of podcasts, a lot of magazine interviews, a lot of television, so, but I'm not really good at being organized about letting people know. But follow me on Facebook and Instagram, and you'll at least know, what I'm doing media wise. And I'm also really trying to get better about, being the voice of reason on Instagram. I am so tired of reading these posts that we all need to cut everything if we're menopausal or hypothyroid. And I'm committed to trying small changes add up. I'm going to try to do, semi-regular posts dispelling some of these myths because I'm just so tired of seeing it in these extremes that are heavily promoted, and there's no conversation about what the real person can do who likes sugar. And I don't think I'm addicted, and I don't need to do a detox. I just need to maybe cut back on sugar for a few days. I
Yeah.
mean, really, come on, get
Rein it in.
real.
Yes. No, we need big voices like yours out there. And that's why I'm thrilled about your podcast as well. Tell us again, is it released or you're about to release?
It's going to be released November 3rd. So
Okay,
everywhere you
coming
listen
up.
to podcasts, and it's called Practically Healthy by Dr.
Yes.
Melina. So yeah, actually that's going to be really fun because I'm going to have experts on that I challenge with their recommendations that I don't, I mean, I'll do it in a nice way, I promise, with a little bit of humor, but I'm not just going to accept, I already recorded my first one, and she does a soup cleanse and everything, and she's talking about how many hours and I'm like, okay, back up here. We got to do this for the busy mom. If I buy a box of soup, what can I add to make it healthier? Because what spices and herbs. So I am going to push back on people. I'm having, I mean, my friend Randy Jackson is going to come on the podcast. We're going to have a real conversation about what he actually does, not the celebrity version of it. I'm going to
Yes.
have, people that I don't, experts, doctors that I don't necessarily agree with, and I'm
Yeah.
going to let them say their piece, and then I'm going to say my piece.
Yeah.
So
I
I think it's
love
going
that.
to be good. I think it's going to
It's
be
going to be
good.
amazing. I will be
Yeah.
listening. And
Awesome. I'm excited.
being in the hot seat sounds fun, but maybe, maybe scary. I don't
Well,
know.
I think you and I agree more than we disagree. So
I
I
think
think,
so too.
what, like if I was talking to you, we would really focus on practical tips, like, a back and forth exchange for things that have worked. You have a more extensive experience with post gastric bypass patients. So maybe we'd talk about that, sports
Yeah.
in the gym. There's so much cool stuff to talk about. That's why, you know, I love talking to people, and I know a lot of people, that regular or not, but it's just talking to, people with an opinion. I think for you, listeners would really get a lot of like actionable, practical things that they could do. And maybe I would learn from it too. I feel like the more I know in this journey of nutrition and weight loss, the less I know. I mean, it's been very
Yeah.
humbling the last 22 years now, because there's just, I want to keep learning. I want to keep getting ideas. I
Mhm.
want to keep getting quick tips to help people, or slow tips. If you're a foodie, maybe you know how to cook better than I do, and you can give people some ideas for people who actually know how to cook. So that's kind of the idea. So I am super excited about it being practically healthy, in a
Your title's
practical.
amazing.
Yeah,
Love it.
thank you.
Yes. As we send you out here, I always like to ask this question. What is something that you would wrap your arms around our listeners? Maybe it's even words of advice that you give your children before they walk out the door, or maybe it's to clients before they walk out the door. What's kind of your one thing that if you could just pour your love over them?
My favorite saying in the whole world is, failure does not lie in falling down, it lies in staying down.
Mm,
So we're all going to fail. It's what you do. Don't beat yourself up for failing. It's what you do after that that defines you. And that's what I want my kids to learn. That's what I think everybody can benefit from, is really keeping that mantra in mind. So, that's it for me. That's kind of my what I live by, and what I want my children to move forward in life, not beating themselves up for failing, but how picking yourself up, dusting yourself off, and finding out how you can do better next time.
thank you. That was beautiful.
Mhm.
Wonderful. Ah,
My
love, love, love.
pleasure.
Thank you. We're so spoiled today, Melina. Thank you. Thank you.
My pleasure. It was really fun.